Hello, and welcome to the discussion about preparing for the new world of work. My name is Amy, and I'll be your moderator today in the background. If you experience a technical difficulty anytime during this event, please do mention it in the Q&A box at the lower end of your screen, and we will do our best to assist you. Please note that you are part of a larger audience today, and all attendees will be in listen-only mode for the duration of the event. As a reminder, this event is being recorded, and you will have an opportunity to ask questions at the conclusion of today's panel discussion. You may type in your question at any time during the event in the Q&A box. Please also participate in the polls that will appear from time to time on your screen. You can move your poll window to any part of the screen that works best for you. Joining us today will be Ravi Kumar, President of Infosys, and his wonderful panel of leaders, followed by Simon Sinek, TED speaker, author, and workplace visionary. With that, ladies and gentlemen, let's get started.
Keep an eye on that. We're trying to adjust our model to figure out, obviously we're not functioning the way we were. We're not fully operating all the buildings.
Thank you, Amy, for that wonderful kickoff. Hello, everyone, on a Friday morning, afternoon, and evening, wherever you're logging in from. Well, it really doesn't matter. We're all on a lockdown. The way I see it is we have 2 more days to go for the week to end. Today, I have a very illustrious panel and a celebrity speaker debating on one of my favorite topics, preparing for a new world of work. Just a few months ago, when we were talking about this topic, a very hot topic for the last 1 or 2 years, we were talking about the shift of work from humans to humans of machines amplifying the potential of humans, the embrace of gig workers in enterprise workforce, virtual plus physical, moving away from degrees to skills, accelerated pace at which digital technologies were getting adapted in workplaces and in businesses. It kind of looked like we were far away, or at least we were getting there. And in just a few months, look at what this crisis has done: a dramatic restructuring of the economic and social order in which our businesses and societies traditionally operated. We are going to navigate to the other side of the crisis, and as we navigate to the other side of the crisis, um, we are going to deal with contrasts and contradictions, as I call it. Today is a contrast and contradiction. We are all isolated but collaborating. There are so many of those contracts and contradictions we're going to deal with: global versus local, physical versus virtual, isolation versus collaboration, humans versus machines, agility versus resilience, full-time workers versus gig workers. This crisis is going to actually get us to a new normal as we get to the other side of the crisis. And I'm so raring to go with this illustrious panel to talk about some of these interesting topics. We have a limited time, so I'm going to jump in directly into the panel. My first panelist is Shankar Govelu, the CIO, the global CIO of Verizon, responsible for the company's IT strategy, digital platforms, all the supporting infrastructure. One of my favorite CIOs is doing a lot of transformational work for Verizon as they actually move to the next wave of telecom revolution, as I call it. My second panelist is Todd Lander, the CIO of Southern California Edison, again, one of my favorites. Manages a very diverse IT infrastructure and applications. In fact, he's one of them who straddles between operational technologies and IT technologies. Both these companies, Verizon and Southern California Edison, I call them essential services in utilities and telecom. My third panelist, Sanjay Poonen, the Chief Operating Officer of VMware, a company in the midst of transformation in workplaces, driving worldwide sales, support marketing and alliances, orchestrating virtualization, if I may. Phil First, my favorite analyst, tech visionary, CEO and founder of HFS, a world renowned analyst and a writer, very provocative. So we have a great panel out there. And let me go to the first panelist. I think we've all got set. Yesterday I was on a panel with the US Chamber of Commerce, and interestingly, one panelist was on the video, and suddenly he switched to go to the panelist who is closest in distance virtually from me, Shankar, on the east coast of the United States. So, Shankar, you and I have discussed many times, I would say many times, about productivity. As we get to the other side of the crisis, I do believe we will get to a transitionary phase where we go back and forth, and then as the vaccine comes on board, we will be at a stable state, a new equilibrium, which will be a hybrid working model. And there is this big question about productivity. Some say productivity has plateaued for decades, and there's scientific research which says that. But this this hybrid model which we'll get to, it does seem like we will have a productivity upswing, if I may. Tell us a little bit about it. And I know you went remote, 115,000 employees, literally in a few days. How did you get there?
Absolutely. So thanks for the question, Ravi, and a pleasure to be on the panel here today. So from a productivity standpoint, let's talk about that, right? So the way we look at this is, from an outcomes perspective, if you look at for Verizon, we've not skipped a beat, right? So the frequency of our software releases hasn't slowed down any at all. We are continuing to meet our customer commitments. We stay focused on our strategic priorities when it comes to the rollout of 5G, our fiber deployment. We also see the digital dexterity of the organization has increased several fold in a period of weeks. And in terms of how our employees are embracing the productivity and collaboration tools to get things done. And just recently, we sent a survey out to our employees. And what we found was over 80% of them responded that they have adopted really well to this work from home model. And that's good to see. And then important thing to note here, though, is while remote work leads to an increased output during normal times, right, to the point that you were making before, because there is no commute times, there is no distraction, etc. What we're going through now is anything but normal, right? So that's something that we have to be mindful of. So, for instance, parents with kids who are doing online schooling, they are taking the additional job of having to be full-time teachers in addition to taking care of the work projects, etc. They're having to take care of the kids at home, elders at home, concerned about the health of themselves and their families. They are isolated from families and friends and colleagues as well. Despite these stressful conditions, our employees are putting in extra effort and going above and beyond to make sure that we're not skipping a beat when it comes to making progress on our business priorities. What I am concerned, though, is how long can this be sustained in this current environment? However, when things get to some level of steady state, whether it be the shelter in place orders being lifted, and as we thoughtfully plan for gradual return of work, as opposed to what we had to do before, where we had to abruptly shift the entire workforce to be able to operate remotely, and we get to this balance, this new normal that you talked about in terms of this hybrid virtual and physical environment, I am confident we will see the productivity gains as long as we are mindful of a few things. That we have to be focused on the remote employee user experience. We have to care for their career development as well. So it cannot be this out of sight, out of mind kind of an issue. We'll have to make sure we keep them engaged. We have the right kind of collaboration tools for them to be productive. So I am bullish in terms of what we can see from a productivity standpoint when we get to this equilibrium of hybrid of physical and virtual. Now, you also
In fact,
mentioned, for us at Verizon, we had to pivot 115,000 employees over on a base of 135,000 employees. And in that process, we also had to essentially reskill and redeploy around 20,000 of our employees to different parts of the business. So the way we did this is essentially looked at the personas that we had within the company. So we had knowledge workers for the most part. The knowledge workers were already enabled with these work from home capabilities. However, when it came to our frontline employees, most of our frontline employees did not have that capability. So we had to make sure from a frontline employees, if you looked at three categories that we have, right? So we have our retail store reps, we have our call center agents, and our field technicians. So when we went into this crisis, around 70% of our stores were closed. So we had to make sure that we redeployed the retail reps who used to work in those stores into other parts of the business, whether it be telesales, customer service, chat, etc. And then when it came to customer service, prior to getting into this crisis, we had 20% of our agents who were enabled with capabilities to work from home. But we literally, in a matter of 72 hours, had to pivot everybody to be able to do that. And good thing is we had virtualized all our call center desktop infrastructure. So that helped us in a big way in being able to pivot the call center teams over. And our field technicians had to make sure they were attending to customer issues in a timely manner. They had to switch to being a home garaged, and we had to enable them with the tools as well so they can get their jobs in a timely manner and complete the dispatches. At a high level, though, I will say like few things that really helped us make the shift very quickly, right? One, first and foremost, having a scalable network, a solid remote access infrastructure that is completely enabled through automation. The investments that we made in our hybrid cloud strategy, the cloud-based collaboration tools, that helped us in a big way. The security, the zero trust information security framework that we put in place clearly helped us as well. Having a very resilient end user support model, virtualization that we had done in the call center desktops. But one point I will make though, while all these business resilience plans certainly helped, what really trumped everything else was the human resilience that we saw, right? Employees being able to embrace the ambiguity, embrace the change, and being able to try different things to solve problems. Nothing was insurmountable because there wasn't a playbook to deal with this scenario at all. So we literally had to write the playbook on the fly, and that's what I'm super impressed about how our team showed up in this crisis.
in fact, Shankar, one of the things which our employees are saying is because they're working in smaller packets of work, 7 days a week instead of working for 8 hours a day at one shot. Scientific study says average productivity is 4 to 5 hours in a day. I do believe that productivity has gone up significantly because of that as well. Commute time shrinking, but also the fact that they're doing smaller spurts of work for a much broader span of time.
Yes,
Uh,
that is
in
absolutely, I
fact,
agree.
we ran a poll as we were talking. 93% of the people who joined, in fact, we have more than 1,500 people who've joined this conference today. 93% of them actually feel that productivity has gone up. So that validates exactly what you just said. Yeah, I was actually talking to a friend of mine who runs an AI hiring firm. She's a founder for a company called Pymetric. and asking her about the human thing around hybrid work environments. And let me put on a quick video of Frida Poli, just a very quick video, which we just took for this particular conference. Over to Frida's video.
I think one of the things that I've thought a lot about is remote working. So whether we are working from home or parenting from work, as some people like to say, I think that while there have obviously been challenges, as a mother of three, I think it's been really wonderful in many ways for me, in any case, to have more time with my children, to be able to see them more often. And then another thing that I think we are going to potentially have here to stay is an increase in technology. If I think about recruiting, the space that I know the best, there are a lot of companies that are really rethinking their processes for hiring people, onboarding people, and so on, and really trying to take not the social element out of it, but the physical contact piece out of the equation. And I think that there's a lot of good to that, right? If you think about, for example, a career fair, which consisted of lots of people getting together to mill around and drop resumes and have very superficial conversations, that's not a hugely valuable activity. It exposes you to a lot of physical contact, and it never felt particularly humane or very productive or compelling. And I think we can do a lot of those types of things using, digital tools, forms of artificial intelligence that can actually help route us to the right types of work, rather than relying on these sort of outdated processes that, again, expose us to a lot of physical situations that we may not want to in the future, and also very costly in terms of travel and, expenditures, but don't provide as much value. So I actually think that there's huge potential for technology to make the world a more humane place. And again, without removing the social piece of it, retaining that social element and fostering those social connections and that human to human empathy and creativity that we always think of as being uniquely human, but without necessarily all of the other externalities that come with some of the physical things that we are accustomed to when it comes to business as usual. So those are my thoughts on how this pandemic may end up changing the future of work of the future. And thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Frida. So over to Sanjay, the Chief Operating Officer of VMware. Thank you, Shankar, for those very insightful thoughts. So Sanjay, everybody mentioned on demand, this remote model. There's this debate about digital infrastructure on the cloud, its reliability, security, and in many ways, performance. Um, what do you think the current infrastructure, the ability of the current infrastructure to deal with all these three aspects, as we switch from a remote to a physical to a remote, back and forth?
Thanks, Ravi, and thanks for having me. And it's great to be on this illustrious panel. I think we are all experiencing so much in our professional, personal lives that have changed over the last, certainly for us in the United States, the last 8 weeks. Many of you in India have been in lockdown for maybe half that period of time. And if you've had friends and family affected by COVID, our thoughts and prayers with you. VMware, we invented the notion of virtualization for an x86 architecture 20 years ago. So now we find everybody using this word virtualization. In some senses, this is sort of what we do. We're certainly in the data centers, we are that sort of household name. On the desktop infrastructure, security, we've been investing a little bit. I'll get to that in a second. But let me kind of start with a little bit of a personal story. Towards the end of February, I was actually with Ravi and a few of folks on this call at Davos in January. And everybody's there with the virus had already started, as we all know now in China. But we were all there in Davos, so we didn't know how dramatically our world was going to change in just a few days and weeks. Fast forward to end of February, which was just 3 or 4 weeks later, we were getting ready at VMware to do a massive sales conference, bring all of my customer-facing organizations, some 15, 17,000 people, to Las Vegas. And it was not yet declared, COVID was not yet declared a pandemic. It was just starting to come into a few countries. The death rates were small. even in the United States. So we were going to do it. One Friday afternoon, late Friday, the event started, and the following Monday, we huddled together, and we just felt like, many of our employees were canceling, coming in, they were worried. We decided to do the entire event virtual. 15,000. I was really proud of the effort. We tried this 4 or 5 years ago in terms of, trying to get this to all work. And it wasn't as effective, but we were able to, on the sort of the span of a weekend, turn that entire event into something like this for 15,000 people. First, in the United States and APJ, and we've been trying to do this now for our customers. What we found in the last 8 weeks is that many of the first responders, hospitals, schools, governments, pharmacies, retailers are our biggest customers. And they just called us for help. And I told all of our teams, you need to, if you're healthy, obviously your first priority is your health. So our attention turned to our employees first. But if you're healthy, turn your attention to serving customers. And don't even think about this as a payday. I mean, if you serve your customers, the revenue is going to come in at the right point in time. Just turn to serving them, that sort of servant mindset. And we began to hear story after story of hospitals, schools, governments, utilities, retailers, pharmacies, depending on our critical infrastructure to run their business, because often you couldn't even send people to a data center. You had to do it all remotely in the private cloud. You had to have your virtual desktop and your management and security infrastructure ready for home. And this was something that people, had to get ready. We had one customer who had 10,000 virtual desktops, and we were rolling out those very quickly, reasonably quickly. In 2 weeks, they went to 200,000 desktops because they had to get that out. So our investment the last few years in kind of a digital workplace, we are now the leaders in that sort of digital workspace category, I think was, kind of came in at the right time to help our customers. We've been adding to that digital workspace endpoint security in an acquisition we did of Carbon Black, and then supplementing with network acceleration technology for SD-WAN in the leading. Each of these areas we're leaders. And what we've sought to do is take that trifecta of a digital workspace, endpoint security, and SD-WAN, and then go and work with the best unified communications players like Zoom, Teams, WebEx, Slack, BlueJeans, now acquired by Verizon, and deeply integrate our products with them. So the customer experience in this is obviously a webinar, but most often people were doing video conferencing, is highly secure. We will do a webinar next week with Zoom and the CEO of Zoom. Obviously, they've been having an enormous amount of increase, but a big focus of their platform is security. And we are becoming their partner in that regard. So these are the types of things, Ravi, that we're seeking to do. I would say serve our employees first. And as many, I think Shankar mentioned it, this is a trying time for many of our employees, especially if you have younger kids. This is, by the way, Teacher Appreciation Week. I should recognize teachers. We are all trying and struggling at being a teacher. I have a 13-year-old daughter and twin 10-year-old boys. And man, do I have an appreciation for a teacher this week, this entire last 8 weeks. And we are all looking to make our family life better. I've never appreciated ever in my life my bicycle as much, because every evening I'm able to take my kids out for a bike ride. I didn't do that before because I was traveling a lot. Now we're rediscovering many of those things I hope will last forever. So, Ravi, that's the new normal, and we're if you focus on your employees, and then if your employees are healthy, turn their attention to your customers, I think we will get through this crisis.
Thank you, Sanjay. That was very thoughtful. Over to Todd. So, Todd, one of my CIO friends mentioned to me the other day that the clock speed has changed from years to months to days to hours. And the role of the CIO is almost the nerve center of an enterprise. In fact, just before I jump in there, I did a poll on Sanjay's topic. Overwhelmingly, everybody said security is a much bigger concern and importance than reliability and performance. It's very interesting. So, Todd, tell us a little bit about clock speed. How do you think the CIO's office has become the nerve center now? I wrote a post recently where I actually mentioned the new high for a CIO. The CIO is back in the nerve center, and clock speed seems to be the most important thing now.
Sure. Thanks, Ravi. Good morning, everybody from Southern California. We provide, Southern California Edison provides an essential service to 15 million people in Southern California. We've had a lot of challenges, just like everybody else. in providing an essential service, we've had to do things like sequester employees. We, just like everyone else, we are making people productive from home. We have 13,000 employees, another 8 or 9,000 contractors. We've got a bunch of people in India. We had to make everybody productive from home in a matter of days. So what's interesting to me is one day we had 80+% of people in the office, and literally 24 to 48 hours later, nearly everybody was working from home. And I maybe, Ravi, I would change the question a little bit from the role of the CIO to the role of the enabling technology. So the IT at this point, I'm sure my fellow CIOs can appreciate it. Our role is a little bit more elevated, and technology, internet access, the collaboration tools we use, in our case, was Skype. I'll talk about that in a minute. Is becoming something more like oxygen. So every day, the connectivity. Quick little side note: our CEO had just terrible internet service, and that became one of our highest priorities because he had a desire to connect to our 13,000 employees once a week via live stream. We needed to make sure that technology is in place to allow him to do that, much like the rest of us. So it's these really little things that create big challenges for the entire population of not just our employees, but all of our customers. So it's a different time for IT. I attend many meetings, I'm sure much like the rest of you, my fellow CIOs, and we're sort of maybe in the mode of explaining what happened when something broke. And now when we're attending meetings, it's a lot of congratulations because of the heroic efforts of the team. So I would say the role of the CIO and the role of an IT organization is extremely different, and the expectations are much higher than they were. Going back to thinking about technology like oxygen, the partnership we have with all of our cloud providers, whether it's SAP or one of the more pressing right now is our relationship with Microsoft. So having the Microsoft cloud operate reliably and monitoring their performance has become a hyper focus of myself and the rest of my team. So I look at it like I need a Microsoft czar. So anytime Microsoft has a blip in their infrastructure, we need to know about it. We want to know what investments they're making back.
All right, we thought we lost you for a few
pretty dynamically. I'm back, right? So there was some video issue. So right now, as we rolled out, luckily we got ahead of the game, I'd say years ago, and we had deployed Skype a number of years ago. But I would say the utilization a while ago was conference calls. People were still using audio, and suddenly everybody's using video. We already had the video in place, and I don't know about you all, but sometimes people get shamed in coming on video, and you can see more people. And I would also submit that in some ways you're further distancing yourself from your peers, your colleagues, your friends, because you can't physically touch them or shake hands with them. But in another realm, people are inviting you into their homes. So for every single one of us, it's a bit of a level playing field. We're all working from home. Nobody has sort of an upper hand on anybody else. It's always fun to look at somebody's backgrounds or pictures in the rooms, and you see the dog go by or the kid or the spouse. It's very different interaction with people. And I would say as human beings, we're a lot more receptive of that today than maybe we would have been a couple of years ago. So we're all on a level playing field. What happens when we go back to work? Or some of us go back to work, and some people are in the office, and some people are not in the office. And what's the technology demands that's going to be required at that point in time? I don't think we're prepared for that, because it's a little bit less about the technology and more about the behavior. The other thing I'll maybe finish with is we had Skype, and we're moving to Teams, and in the past that would have been big project plan. Let's take a couple of months. Let's plan it out. Let's go. Well, no, we're not doing that anymore. The OCM, the organizational change management, is a bit out the window. So we're driving pretty hard, fast. To your point, clock speed, Ravi. We're rolling out Teams. People are adopting it. literally every day. It's coming from the top. I'm making sure we train a bunch of people. But the notion of OCM in the middle of a crisis is, it seems like it's not needed as much because most people tend to band together and get very productive based on their own individual needs. So that to me has been very inspiring. I'm extremely proud of our IT organization and their resilience, and also our 13,000 employees in Southern California Edison. It's been truly amazing to watch.
Thank you, Todd. We ran a poll as we were talking. 92% of the people actually believe that the clock speed has changed to hours, and the CIO is the nerve center of an enterprise. I'm going to go to Phil next. So, Phil, as disruptions happened across the world, we've seen waves in the past. The agile firms actually, moved to the next normal or the next equilibrium. I do believe this shock is going to bring agility and resilience. These are contradicting forces. Together being important for an enterprise to survive a disruption. I wrote this post called The Punctuated Equilibrium. Tell us how resilience is now going to play a role as much as agility is.
Yes, it's a great question, Ravi. Resilience is probably the most used word now after unprecedented. And it's absolutely clear this is a year where we have to, one, look after our core customers and our core business to survive this current period, and also at the same time to figure out how we can truly unleash our organization as we emerge from this with an attack strategy. Because as much as we hate to admit it, a crisis does create an opportunity for many to get ahead. And I think resilience is going to be created through our people. And we talk a lot about this phase of unleashing people. I think this is absolutely critical for what is happening now in the market. We have to write a new playbook. There's no defined curriculum for what's happened in the world and what is going to happen. So we have to accept that change is the new constant. I think we have to engage our businesses with a startup mentality, massive flexibility, real adaptation. We have to really understand that we're now bonded with our customers in a shared digital environment. And we've got to look at training our staff on more low-code, no-code tech to maximize business possibilities. We've got to think much more about rethinking our staff roles to break down these legacy stovepipes. We've got to drive real interplay between business and IT staff to create much more hybrid roles and genuine digital talent. I think this is all about people. This is all about talent. We spoke a lot about everyone investing in shiny new technology, shiny new things. This is a real time where it's about what do we truly need to survive this? How can we embrace technology to really enable this? And how can we get our people to really stand up, really become more entrepreneurial, really leverage their social skills as well as their knowledge and intellectualism to be successful? And this is all about embracing our fear, getting out of the comfort zone, educating ourselves like never before, and really coming together. I love some of the things that we've been saying around looking into people's houses, becoming more digital with the way we function with each other. I think the habits we picked up even in just the last few weeks will stay with us for the rest of our careers. Being much more efficient, getting meetings done faster, spending more time talking to people, just getting to know each other a bit more. So when we do go back to a more normal type world, I think we're going to have much more digital interaction, much more efficiency in how we operate. But unleashing our people is the key to being resilient and the key to being successful in where we go. And thinking about things in an infinite way, which I think Simon's going to talk about shortly. But stop thinking about the next 20% or the next metric and think about how we want to truly interact with each other over the long haul and how we want to really survive. So that's how we do it, I think.
Thank you, Phil. In fact, the poll results of this one really surprised me. It says 65% believe agility is more important than resilience. I was almost expecting a 50-50 answer. We have dealt with a known unknown, as I call it. The virus is a known unknown. I think organizations are going to prepare themselves for an unknown unknown. And I would believe resilience is more important, but the poll really surprised me because there are 1,000 people who polled, and they're saying the agility is more important. I'm going to squeeze in one additional question to all of you. In the interest of time, if you can keep your answers precise, that would be great. Shankar, over to you. I loved what you told me recently about the art of the possible. In the past, CIOs kind of enabled businesses for market launches, product launches, and the ideation started from the businesses, and the CIOs enabled it. It kind of looks like the CIO now is painting the picture of the art of the possible, and businesses are figuring out what's the best option. Tell us what you meant by that.
Yeah, so clearly CIOs are now playing a central role in navigating through this crisis. And as technology leaders, we are able to demonstrate the art of the possible with technology, and that is enabling our business partners to reconfigure their business operations accordingly. So, to some extent, Ravi, there is this role reversal, right? So, showing what is possible with technology, reconfiguring the business operations to take advantage of that and move the business forward, as opposed to how we were operating before, where your technology was enabling a business process that was predefined. Couple of examples I will give you, like what we have done, right? So, for instance, in our case with Verizon, field technicians had to go to customers' home to address problems. But in this crisis, this COVID-19 crisis, we had to take care of the safety and security, health of our technicians, our employees, and we also have to care for the health of our customers as well. So, how can a technician be effective without stepping foot into the customer's home? So this is where creativity came about, where our engineers were able to come up with an innovation where using an augmented reality-based platform, providing those remote visual assistance tools to our technicians so they can essentially guide the customer through an install process, through a repair process, essentially by sending a link to the customer. Customer uses their smartphone with the rear view camera on. The technician is outside guiding the customer and annotating on the screen, here are the things that you will have to do, and troubleshooting a problem or helping with an install, right? Same thing if you think about what we're doing with touchless retail. In our retail stores, when we had 70% of our retail stores closed and the 30% that we're operating, we said, okay, how do we go completely contactless, not just to maintain the social distancing guidelines, but take that a step further. And whether it be touchless signature, touchless payments, QR code based in store pickup, things like that. I mean, in fact, having the ability to also handle cash in stores using our bill payment kiosks as opposed to our sales reps having to touch the cash. The entire process is now contactless. So we just announced yesterday, we are now going to be opening up 42% of our stores this week. We only had 30% open before. So given this technology that we have now enabled, we will be 42%. Come June timeframe, we plan to take that up to 50, and then keep increasing that as we go. So this is a couple of examples of showing what is the art of the possible, and just think out of the box to really see how we can create some solutions. Then the business can rally behind that and reconfigure their operations to keep the business moving forward. So I think this is and many of the speakers have made this point as well. This is the prime, and you mentioned CIOs have become the nerve center. Clearly that is becoming more and more true in this crisis.
Thank you, Shankar. The art of the possible, certainly. Sanjay, over to you. I just saw one of the quotes from the VMware CEO who talks about how this is not a sprint and a marathon. Very simple, it kind of relates to agility versus resilience in a way. Tell us what he meant by that. I'm sure he meant a sustained effort to create virtualization on demand, as I call it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I was asking my dad, who is 80 years old and he's doing well. When was the last time the world went into this type of lockdown, quarantine, shelter in place? And he said maybe World War II. And we've not seen anything like this. Certainly, I've not seen a pandemic. We're all inventing the playbook. Many of the other speakers have said this. Now, World War II lasted 6 years. We've slowed down dramatically. It's sort of like I've described this when I've talked to the media, like a rapid slowdown on a traffic jam. Traffic jams become slow very quickly and take a long time to come back up. So it's not clear to us how long the recovery will take, whether it's 2, 3 quarters. But I'm pretty sure, and as are most economists, it's not going to be 6 years. Certainly when the vaccine shows up, things will be better, but even before then. So what do you do during that time? There's parts of your life that's going to change. You focus on your health and your employees, and then you focus on partnerships. I think it's been incredibly grateful. We have a great partnership with Infosys, Verizon, utilities companies that like Todd's, and many of the analysts are here. These partnerships become even more important because you've got to rely on each other. It takes a village to solve any of these problems. And that's what the mindset we are trying to do. We've sought to now over communicate with our employees. I've been doing in-country conference calls, video calls on Zoom with all of my key countries, and do it in their time zone. In Japan, in their time zone, in India, in China, in parts of Europe. And when you do those types of things, it's okay to be able to do that for weeks, months. We've been 8 weeks shelter in place. If this lasts another 6, 8 months, I will tell you there's a couple of things that are good that have happened. I used to travel about 40, 50% of my life to meet customers. Ravi, I'm sure your life is also a lot of travel. I've told my sales teams, I hope the travel when we're out of this crisis drops by half of what it was before the crisis. And that will be good for the planet. It will be good for our family life. And maybe that's the new normal. Okay. When you look at the pictures of the carbon, emissions in the world that are satellite images, it's a beautiful planet right now. Maybe some of that will last forever. So I think there's some positives, Ravi, that will come out of this, and and we have to take that long range view.
Thank you, Sanjay. Thank you so much. Over to Todd. For decades, operational technologies and information technology kind of were running in parallel track. You have smart grids, you have in your industry, you have operational technologies on the field. I kind of get a sense that this is a great point of confluence now as they come together, because sometimes the CIO today is playing the role of the chief operating officer.
Yeah, good point. One thing I do want to point out to Sanjay is power consumption in Southern California overall is down around 4 or 5%. So it's really interesting dynamic right now where you see greater consumption in the home, but significant reduction in businesses, and it sort of levels out to around a 4 or 5% decrease. So just figured you'd want to know that little factoid. The way that I know this is because there has been a massive convergence between the operational technologies and the traditional IT technologies, and it's at our substation level, it's at our smart meter level, and most recently, for those that are residents of California, it's also driven by wildfires. So because of the emergence of wildfires, it's requiring us to do things that are significantly different, which is leverage more of that technology that's already out there, but also supplement that with additional operational technologies like weather cameras and sensors, and hundreds of those, and initially, well, probably eventually thousands of those, so we get greater penetration of weather sensors, so we can better predict whether we're going to see the start of a wildfire. During this crisis is actually accelerating some of that work, and some of the challenges we've had historically in deploying some of these capabilities are related to cybersecurity. We're not removing restrictions on security. I'm sure everybody else is also faced with some of these challenges. We're trying to figure out unique ways to allow the connectivity while remaining cyber secure. So it's causing the team to be, I think, a lot more creative in the way that we're deploying technologies. We've seen an acceleration of the capabilities in some of these operational technologies, deploying more advanced algorithms to better predict wire down. So one of the things was already emerging in importance was the relevance of data and how important data is to leverage some advanced tools. And so that was already there. But now you see, when you're working remote, you don't have the opportunity to walk around, ask somebody questions. We're seeing more analytics, more predictive analytics, more use of data to make better decisions, because when you're not together and you're not having that in-person collaborative conversation, all you have is the data and analytics to look at to make better informed decisions. So we're seeing that move at a much more rapid pace.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you, Todd. Absolutely. Operations technologies and information technologies are going to have a confluence. I'm going to squeeze in one last one before we get to Simon. And it's kind of little related and a prelude to that, Phil. Do you think enterprises going more purposeful after this crisis? For decades, economists actually felt enterprises were all about shareholder value. My personal belief is enterprises are the biggest, businesses are the biggest platform for change, and societal impact. Give us a quick comment, and then we will get to Simon.
Yeah, I think we were getting that way before this, Ravi, to be honest. I think that even at Davos, there was very, very strong agreement that climate change really was the number one issue that CEOs needed to come together on and drive common purpose. And we've seen a lot of focus around gender diversity, equality, pay equality, all these types of things. And I think this will just accelerate further our desire to look beyond just quarterly profits and think more about common purpose, more infinite purpose as we look out into the future. And I generally think we will start to look at things like climate change now more purposely, because we don't want to get blindsided like we've become in the last few weeks. Everyone was blindsided by this, whether we were a month late or whatever. This was not something we anticipated. And we need to look at things like sustainability and climate change as we move forward, because we know that could be our next crisis. What if the world starts to run out of drinking water? What if things really start to overheat and people really suffer? How can we avoid things in the future? So I really hope that there's a much broader common cause that bonds us all a lot more. And I also hope that organizations and corporations see that they stand for a lot more than what they do today. I heard that Amazon could be worth $2 trillion next year. That is an incredibly powerful country-sized organization now. How are they going to interact with the Microsofts and the Googles and the Alibabas of this world? So we're absolutely moving into a more purposeful mindset where I think corporations and governments, they have no choice now but to be far more engaged in our futures.
Thank you, Phil. We all envy your background. You have a cat going around, and you have some birds chipping behind. I wish all of us had the same real background. So that was wonderful. I wish we had more time. There were some very interesting questions coming from the audience as well. I'm going to put one of you on the spot, maybe Shankar. What percentage? And this is a very interesting question. Just give me one word. What percentage of the workforce would be virtual after we get to a stable state? It's a very interesting question. I thought I'll ask you. Just one
Well,
number.
2/3.
2/3 from home?
Yes.
Wow, that's provocative. That's very provocative. Okay, so thank you so much. That was a wonderful panel. I really loved the insights. I'm sure the audience did. We have more than 1,000, I think almost 1,500 odd people who've joined this conference. I'm going to hand this over back to Amy. I really thank you all for your valuable time, and I'm sure the audience enjoyed it. Over to Amy. Amy, are you there?
I'm here. Thank you so much, Ravi. And thank you, everyone, for that stimulating conversation. The polls were so interesting, not what I expected. It was so insightful, so much food for thought. Now, before we move to the segment that you've all been waiting for, we ask that you do not record this part of the webinar or use any part of this section of the event on social media. With that,